Crash! The sound of shattering crystal echoed through the corridors of Highgrove House like a gunshot in the night. Servants froze mid-step, teacups trembling in their hands. What they heard next would haunt them forever. "How dare you lie to my face, Charles?" The voice belonged to Lady Diana Spencer, soon to be Princess of Wales in just 48 hours. But right now, she was just a 20-year-old woman whose world was crumbling around her. Let me take you back to July 27th, 1981. 2 days before the most watched wedding in television history, the entire world believed they were witnessing a fairy tale, a shy kindergarten teacher capturing the heart of the future King of England. The media called it the wedding of the century, but fairy tales don't exist behind palace doors. Diana stood in the center of Charles's private bedroom, her hands shaking as she held a small velvet box. Inside lay a gold bracelet, elegant, expensive, and engraved with 2 intertwined letters, G and F, Gladys and Fred. Pet names that made her stomach turn. Charles sat on the edge of his 4-poster bed, still in his riding clothes, mud staining his boots. At 32, he carried himself with the practiced composure of a man born to rule. But his eyes, those Windsor blue eyes, couldn't meet hers. "I can explain," he said quietly, his voice carrying that clipped aristocratic accent that usually commanded respect. Tonight, it sounded hollow. "Explain," Diana's voice cracked. She had discovered the bracelet among his things while looking for cufflinks to match her wedding dress, the same dress that hung in the adjacent room like a ghost of dreams about to die. "Explain how you're giving jewelry to another woman 2 days before our wedding." The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Outside, rain pelted the diamond-paned windows of the Gloucestershire estate. Inside, the ornate grandfather clock in the corner ticked away the seconds of their unraveling. Charles finally looked up. His face was a mask of royal training, controlled, distant, untouchable. But Diana saw something else there. Guilt. And worse, resignation. "Diana, you must understand. Camilla and our situation is complicated." Complicated. She threw the bracelet at his feet. It landed with a soft thud on the Persian rug, the gold catching the lamplight. "What's complicated about betraying your future wife?" In the corridor outside, Mrs. Margaret Whitfield pressed her back against the wall, her heart hammering. She had served the royal household for 15 years. She had witnessed arguments, scandals, and secrets that could topple governments. But this felt different. This felt like watching a monarchy crack at its foundation. Beside her, young Thomas, the new footman, looked pale as parchment. His eyes darted toward the stairs, calculating if he could make it to the servants' quarters before being discovered eavesdropping on the future king and queen. "Should we?" he whispered. Mrs. Whitfield shook her head sharply. They were trapped. Moving now would only draw attention to their presence. They had no choice but to witness history's most private moment. Inside the bedroom, Diana began to pace. Her tall frame moved with the restless energy of a caged animal. She had always been athletic, a swimmer, a dancer, but now every step seemed to burn with barely contained fury. "Do you think I'm stupid, Charles? Do you think I don't see the way you light up when someone mentions her name? The way you excuse yourself to make important calls that last for hours?" Charles stood slowly, his movements careful and measured. He walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back in that familiar royal pose. Rain streaked down the glass like tears. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said to his reflection. "But you have." Diana's voice broke completely now. "You have hurt me in ways I didn't even know were possible. I trusted you. I believed you when you said you loved me." He turned then, and for a moment, his royal mask slipped. Diana saw the man beneath the crown, tired, conflicted, trapped by duty and desire in equal measure. "I do care for you, Diana, deeply. But love is a luxury people like us cannot always afford." The words hit her like a physical blow. She staggered backward, one hand reaching for the bedpost to steady herself. "A luxury? Is that what you think this is? Some kind of business arrangement, isn't it?" Charles's voice was barely above a whisper. "Did anyone ever ask what we wanted? Did anyone care if we were compatible? If we shared dreams? If we could build a life together? Or were we simply told that this match would be suitable for the crown?" The raw honesty in his voice should have comforted her. Instead, it terrified her. Because deep down Diana knew he was right. She had been 19 when they began courting. A girl who cleaned houses for her sister's friends and worked at a nursery school. She had been flattered by the attention of the Prince of Wales, swept up in the romance of it all. But had she ever really known him? Had he ever really known her? "So what now?" she asked, her voice small and broken. "Do we go through with this charade? Stand before God and lie to the entire world?" Charles moved toward her then, and for a moment she thought he might reach for her. Instead, he stopped just out of arm's reach. "We do our duty," he said simply. "We serve the crown. We give the people what they want. A royal wedding, a fairy tale, hope for the future. And what about us? What about what we want? We learn to want what we have." The finality in his voice cut through her like ice. Diana felt something inside her chest shatter. Not her heart, but something deeper. Her innocence, perhaps. Her faith in happy endings. Outside the door, Mrs. Whitfield wiped tears from her cheeks with the back of her hand. In 15 years of service, she had never heard anything so heartbreaking. The fairy tale the world was celebrating was built on a foundation of lies and resignation. Thomas looked like he might be sick. This wasn't what he had imagined when he took a position in the royal household. He had expected grandeur, ceremony, tradition, not this raw human pain. Diana walked to Charles's dresser and picked up a silver-framed photograph, one of him playing polo, laughing at something off camera. She had always loved that picture, because it showed him genuinely happy. Now she wondered if Camilla had been the one behind the camera. "Will you at least promise me something?" she asked without turning around. "What?" "Promise me that after tomorrow, after we've given them their fairy tale, you'll try, really try to make this work. Not for the crown, not for duty, but for us, for the children we might have, for the life we could build if we both stopped looking backward." The silence stretched so long that Diana wondered if he had heard her. When she finally turned around, Charles was staring at the bracelet on the floor. "I promise I will try," he said finally. "But Diana, some promises are easier to make than to keep." She nodded, understanding flooding through her like cold water. This was the moment, the real moment, when she stopped being Lady Diana Spencer and became Princess Diana. Not at the altar tomorrow, not when the crown was placed on her head, but right now, in this room, with this conversation. She was entering a world where love was secondary to obligation, where happiness was sacrificed for stability, where the person you became mattered less than the role you played. "Then we understand each other," she said quietly. Charles picked up the bracelet and placed it in his desk drawer. Diana watched him lock it away, wondering if he was locking away his last chance at authentic love, or simply postponing an inevitable reckoning. "The staff will be wondering about the noise," he said, suddenly formal again. "Let them wonder." Diana moved toward the door, then paused. "Charles?" "Yes. Tomorrow, when we stand at that altar, when they ask if I take you to be my husband, I need you to know that I will mean it. Whatever happens after, whatever mistakes we make, whatever pain we cause each other, in that moment, I will mean every word." She left him standing there in the lamplight, surrounded by the remnants of their shattered illusions. Mrs. Whitfield and Thomas scrambled away from the door as Diana emerged. They caught a glimpse of her face, pale but composed, tears dried, chin raised with newfound determination. She looked, Thomas would later tell his wife, like a woman who had just learned to be a princess the hard way. As Diana's footsteps faded down the corridor, the two servants stood in the shadows, understanding that they had witnessed the exact moment when a fairy tale died and a tragedy was born. 2 days later, 750 million people around the world watched Lady Diana Spencer marry Prince Charles in St. Paul's Cathedral. They saw the dress, the crowds, the pageantry, the kiss on the balcony. They saw what looked like love, but Mrs. Whitfield and Thomas knew the truth. Sometimes the most beautiful stories are built on the most painful foundations, and sometimes, the moment a fairy tale ends is the exact moment it begins. What they didn't know, what none of them could have known, was that this conversation would echo through the decades to come. That the bracelet locked away in that drawer was just the first of many secrets that would define a marriage, a monarchy, and ultimately, a legacy that would change the royal family forever. Because some arguments don't just end relationships, they end eras.